We made a marriage pact as kids. On my 35th birthday, she came to collect it. The knock on my front door arrived at exactly 7:14. On the evening of my 35th birthday, I thought it was another neighbor bringing leftover cake or a coworker who had forgotten to RSVP. Instead, standing on my porch in a light blue dress with a weathered wooden box tucked beneath her arm, was the one person I had spent 20 years convincing myself I would never see again. She smiled with eyes that carried both joy and heartbreak, and before I could find a single word, I realized she had come to collect a promise I barely remembered making, but one she had never forgotten. Before we continue, if you believe kindness, hope, forgiveness, compassion, and second chances still matter in this world, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these heartfelt stories reach people who may need them the most. My name is Nathan, and I grew up in a quiet neighborhood outside Asheville, North Carolina. Across the street lived a cheerful little girl named Grace. We spent nearly every afternoon climbing old oak trees, riding bicycles until sunset, and dreaming about what adulthood would look like. We were children who believed every promise lasted forever. One summer afternoon, after watching an old romantic movie with our grandparents, we laughed and declared that if neither of us had found someone by the time we turned 35, we would marry each other. We even wrote it on a piece of notebook paper, signed our names with childish handwriting, folded it carefully, and tucked it inside a tiny wooden box Grace's grandfather had carved. Life, however, had other plans. When we were 14, Grace's father accepted a job in Oregon. The goodbye felt enormous then, but we promised to stay in touch. At first, we exchanged birthday cards and Christmas letters. Then, high school became college. College became careers, and slowly the letters stopped arriving. Years slipped by quietly. I built a respectable life as an architect, bought a modest home, and surrounded myself with good friends. Yet every serious relationship somehow ended before reaching forever. Sometimes the timing was wrong. Sometimes I simply couldn't force a future that didn't feel right. My parents often reminded me that life wasn't a race, but birthdays became quieter each year. By 35, I had accepted that my story might look different than everyone else's. My birthday gathering was small, filled with neighbors, cousins, and coworkers, laughing over homemade food. It was comfortable, but deep inside I carried the silent ache that many people never noticed. The feeling that something important had somehow passed me by. Then Grace appeared. The years had changed her, yet somehow they hadn't. She still carried the same warm smile that made people feel seen. In her hands rested that same wooden box, its edges worn smooth by time. She explained that her grandfather had told her never to throw promises away, simply because life became complicated. Before he passed, he reminded her about the childhood pact. He said that true promises were less about marriage and more about discovering whether two people still recognized each other's hearts after time had tested them. Grace hadn't come expecting a wedding. She had come searching for an old friend. Over the following weeks, our conversations stretched for hours. We walked through parks where children played baseball, visited the lake where we had once skipped stones, and laughed about memories neither of us believed the other would remember. She told me about caring for her mother through a long illness, about opportunities she had sacrificed without regret, and about learning that success meant very little if there was no one to share ordinary evenings with. I shared my own disappointments, the dreams that quietly faded, and the fear that maybe I had waited too long to build the family I always wanted. Something unexpected happened. Neither of us tried to recreate childhood. Instead, we discovered two adults who had been shaped by heartbreak, patience, faith, and resilience. The old promise wasn't pulling us together. The people we had become were. Several months later, I visited Grace's grandfather's favorite church garden. I carried the same wooden box, now holding the faded paper with our childish signatures beside a new letter I had written. The old promise had been made by two children who believed fairy tales were simple. The new promise came from two adults who understood that lasting love required forgiveness, commitment, honesty, and choosing each other every single day. When Grace read the letter, tears quietly filled her eyes before she nodded with the same smile I remembered from decades earlier. Our wedding wasn't extravagant. Family filled the small chapel. Old neighbors traveled across states. My mother cried through nearly the entire ceremony, and Grace's aunt placed the little wooden box beside the guest book as a reminder that even the smallest acts of hope can survive the passing of years. If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who still believes in lasting promises, and subscribe for more heartfelt stories that remind us kindness and hope are never wasted. Before this story ends, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment and tell us whether you've ever kept a promise for many years, or whether someone unexpectedly returned to change your life when you least expected it. As I look at that old wooden box sitting on the shelf in our living room today, I no longer see a childish marriage pact. I see proof that some promises are never really about the words we speak. They're about the kind of people we become while life carries us in different directions. Sometimes love doesn't arrive because everything happens according to plan. Sometimes it finds us because two hearts spent years growing into the people they were always meant to be. And when the time was finally right, one simple knock on a front door changed everything forever.